Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name is Griffin. I am joined by a few members of my team. We have Dan, we have Michelle in here. Thank you for joining us today at Developer Days. This is the Media API session. We're going to give people a couple of minutes to start flowing in as we just started. But I did want to thank all of you for coming to join today. Make sure that you sign up for a Dolby account ahead of time while we're waiting. Dan just linked the sign up link inside of the chat right here. But we're really excited to start showing off everything. I would also like to know if any of you are new to Dolby IO altogether, or if you have done it before and are just here to learn a little bit more and get a little bit in depth. Feel free to let us know in the chat. This is definitely a very interactive session where we'd love to hear from you. So, yeah, let us know and we'll get started very shortly.
Yeah, feel free to use the chat and let us know what city you're coming in from. It always is interesting to see where everybody shows up at.
Okay, well, I guess we will get started. I do want to give a note ahead of time that we do have a couple of limitations in terms of who is able to access WIO based on certain legislation. So I am going to let you know in the chat of a couple limitations. So unfortunately, if you are based in any of the following countries, you are not going to be able to participate in this workshop. We heavily apologize for this. But without any further ado, I will start sharing my screen and we will get started. Great. So if you are all seeing the screen the same way that I am seeing the screen, you're going to be able to see this GitHub link, which I will link in the chat below, which you all should be clicking on right now, which is going to bring you over to the GitHub repository of the workshop that we are going to be using today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click this link here in the To Get Started section, which is going to open the workshop in Binder. This is going to take a couple of moments. So while we wait for that to get loaded, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping on how this is all going to work. So as you can see, we're all in Livestorm right now, which is a very nice platform where we're able to share this workshop. You can see on the right-hand screen, there is the chat section where you can just chat with each other, talk about what's going on. If you have any questions, you can see on the lower right-hand corner, there is the questions section, which is going to let you ask any new questions that you might have that we can get over and be able to give responses both in text, but then also go over in the designated question asking times. You also, on the bottom center of the screen, are going to see that there is a React button, which I'm going to ask you to do a few different times just to make sure that we're all on the same page, that nobody's stuck, and that we can continue on the workshop. So why doesn't everyone give me a thumbs up reaction right now, just so I know you all have found it and are able to get through everything. Awesome. So once we're in Binder, I hope you all have also made your Dolby IO account by now, but we're going to get over that in the steps on that. We can click on and expand this over if your screen is a little bit smaller like mine. This file here that says workshop part 1.ipynb, which we can just double click right here and it's going to open it directly within Binder. Binder is a very cool tool that's sponsored by the Jupyter project, which is a way for you to both run Python code within kind of more of an interactive text-based notebook. So we can go through things in kind of more automated and easy to kind of process way. The first thing we're going to see here is we're going to start with a base raw audio file that is going to be the basis of how we're going to work on this first workshop. In Binder, what we can do is we can run these code blocks by clicking on the code, and we can either click on Run on the top over here, and we can click Run Selected Cells and Don't Advance, or the way I prefer to do it, using Control plus Enter. So I'm going to do that right now, as all of you should also do. And what that's going to do is it's going to load, where you're going to see this circle on the top right turn dark once it is running, and then it's going to hollow up when it's done, and when it's done, you're also going to see this audio file play. Unfortunately, Livestorm doesn't let us play audio directly within the stream, but you can all listen to yourself. This is just a base raw audio file that is going to show some common issues you might see in some of your audio, such as background noise, such as weird levels going on. This is actually audio recorded directly from somebody's phone on an airplane to Amsterdam. So of course there's going to be a lot of background noise going on over there. So to solve this, we have Dolby I/O and the media APIs more specifically, where we're going to enhance this audio, clean up a lot of that background noise, and make everything sound a lot better. So of course, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have a Dolby I/O account. All of you should already done this. If you have not signed up yet, please do that. But what we can do is we can go over to our dashboard, which is going to look like this, and we can go get our API key. So we're going to scroll down to the applications section over here. Some of you might already have an application, that's fine, but if you want to create a new application just for this, we can add a new app. I'm going to call this Workshop, and I'm going to click Create, which is going to take a couple seconds, but what this is going to do is it's going to create a new API key that's going to be tied directly to this application. We can click on the name Workshop, and we can see there are two main types of API keys. First one is communications APIs. We are not going to be using these. So ignore those for now and scroll down to media API keys. This is what we're going to be using today. So we can click on copy next to API key over here. I'm going to rotate mine, so don't go stealing it. You should be using your own API key for this. And we can return back to our Binder tab over here and take a look at this next code block we have over here. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be adding in our API key. Make sure you keep the quotes surrounding the API key, but you replace all the inner text within. And we're also going to be adding in our name here. This is just going to be customizing the URLs. So if you did decide you wanted to use different URLs, it's going to be custom to you, as we're going to be creating these different URLs for you to be able to kind of save this data. We're going to press Control Enter once more. It's going to print out a response. Every single one of these is going to have a response printed out, so you're going to know when it has been done completing. And this is going to save these to the environment. So give me a thumbs up once you have submitted both of these two code blocks and have everything set properly. Great. So it sounds like everyone is properly set up. We now have two key variables set. We have the link to our original media file that we want to process going on right now, which is the video, which you have listened to up here. And we have our API key set, which is going to let us have access to all of our REST API endpoints within Dolby I/O. We also have our name set, so we can differentiate outputs later on. So now let's get into the actual meat of the process. So we're going to call our enhance job using our enhance API. I'm going to note that all of the following code is adapted from the quick start that you can find in the link that you can see over here. So if you're somebody who does better reading at your own pace later on, you can visit our docs website at docs.dolby.io. But part of the beauty of the workshop is that we're going to be able to talk about it live in person, where you can also ask any questions. So we're going to be able to see that we have this code block going on over here. To explain it very briefly, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import requests. This is a very common Python library that's used to make HTTP requests so that we can send and receive data out via the internet. We have the output URL, which is going to be the custom URL that we're going to save the processed audio to, which we can then download later on. And then we're going to build the body of the request by setting the input and the output files, as we already have variables for. And we're going to set the variables for the headers. which is going to be going to the enhance URL endpoint, and we're going to be setting in the API key. The content type is just saying that we're expecting JSON types of data. And then we're going to be calling the API request. So we're going to be sending a post request, meaning that we are sending data over, and we are going to be printing out the response of that post request. So we don't need to make any changes to this code over here. We can just press Control, Enter. It's going to take a little bit of time, but if it has successfully completed, you should get a job ID that looks just like this. Give me a thumbs up if you have the job ID, or let us know if you have run into any errors. Great, looks like we're only getting thumbs up. So next we can check the job status. So the way that works is we are sending over a job and we are processing these asynchronously on Dolby's servers. So you don't have to wait for everything to finish. You can, in theory, submit a bunch of different jobs at a time. But we also want to see the status of it being done. Thankfully, this is a very short file, so it should be complete by now, but we do want to check it out. So it's the same type of structure over here. But this time we're passing in a URL parameter of the job ID going on over here, which we have automatically saved from here. As you can see, we have the job ID as part of the response. So once again, we can just Control Enter and see that we have a response that looks just like the one that we have down here. We have success status, progress is 100, and that means our job is done, it's ready to be downloaded, and we can continue on to that. If any of you have ones that aren't finished, please let me know. But given that we're all working off of the same file, I'm going to assume that it should be done by now, so we can get done to the downloading section. This is going to be done using one more request, but this time instead of to the enhance endpoint, we're going to be sending it to the output endpoint. And we're also going to be just saving it locally. So back on the left hand, we're going to be able to see the file downloaded once it has been completed. And this is just a little bit more Python code that lets us actually take this file stream and be able to download it locally. So once again, we can just do Control Enter. And it's going to show you this big downloading from. Once it's done downloading, we'll see it pop up on the left sidebar. So we'll give it a couple of seconds to properly download. And there it is. So workshop-Griffin, that is my name. It should have your name if you put that in, .mp4, which we're going to be able to listen to by running this little IPython helper code over here. I suggest you take the time to listen to the 12 seconds of it and see if you notice any difference. I'd love to hear in the chat if you have any opinions on if it sounds better, what you like about it, and what's going to go on. And yes, I did just see a question if we have other languages outside of Python. For this workshop, we're going to be using Python just as a simple way to get started with a bunch of different pieces of code in a language that works well with Jupyter. But you can do this via curl, via JavaScript, via Ruby, via PHP. This is just a HTTP-based API call, so you can do it with any language that's able to make those types of requests.
Yeah, Griffin, the other question is around, like, can we do it outside of the Python notebook? So I think the point being is this for this workshop, as you mentioned, this is an easy way to demonstrate the API using Python to the whole group, but absolutely there are other ways to do it from the command line, writing scripts, etc.
Absolutely, and I actually will get into that a little bit more in the second section of the notebook as well, but this is not limited whatsoever to this Python notebook. This is just used for educational purposes to kind of show you what you can do while still being able to show you real code that you might be using in the real world. Great, so give me a thumbs up if you are all done and ready to move on. But if you have, congratulations, you just made your first API call with the Dolby.io Enhance API. Give yourselves all a pat on the back for all of that. It was that simple. And if you are all ready to continue, we can move on to the next part of the workshop, which is going to go a little bit more in depth about some of the nice things that you can do with the Dolby Media APIs that we can continue talking about. Okay, great. So if you're all ready, we can go back over to the left-hand sidebar, and we can go over to workshop part 2.ipynb. Once again, that's going to open inside of this tab. And we're going to step back for a little bit, and we're going to talk about what APIs are and what a REST API specifically is. So an API stands for an application programming interface, which can be thought of as a tool in a builder's toolbox. So when we're using an API, we're formatting and sending data over to a server to be interpreted and processed, and then return a response back to you regarding kind of what the content and what the job was intended for that. And by using this and by outsourcing this, we can kind of save time from having to build every little thing ourselves and be able to use third-party services to help automate these processes for us. A REST API is a specific kind of way of building an API. There's a few different types of them. REST APIs have become probably the most popular types of APIs right now, where in the case of Dolby I/O, this is going to be using representational state transfer, which is what REST stands for, and is kind of built in a specific way. So as you can see, we have an image of our documentation, which kind of shows how this is all built up. But the whole idea is that this structure, just as a note, you do not need to run this code. This is just an example of how the structure is. It's kind of built in a few different parts. So the first one is the URL. This is the endpoint. This is what we're going to be kind of reaching and accessing into. And we are going to be able to call the enhance API, for example, or we also call the output. And we're going to be calling a couple of different ones later on. Then we have the headers. The headers are there to help you pass on what type of content it is, help you pass in your credentials, and make sure that you're only accepting the right type of content, among a couple other key things. The body tends to have the larger data that you're going to be sending over. So we have the input and we have the output, as well as some other customization options that might be able to go on. And then we have the URL parameters, which are going to be appended directly into the URL as a way to be able to kind of make it directly added on. So the job ID is one that we can just put in directly to the URL, so we have the information directly ready. And then finally, we have the HTTP method. This is what it looks like in Python. It's going to look different in other languages, but here you can see we have a post, which is usually for sending data over, but there's gets for getting data, put for actually putting in data as part of a file, deleting data, a lot of different types. These are typical HTTP methods, but this is kind of what builds up the idea of a full REST API call.
Hey, Griffin. So we've got another question in the chat. They'd love to know about some real-world examples besides just this demo that we're currently doing.
Yeah, could you expand a little bit on that question? Because all of this code is code that will work in the real world. And as you saw, that enhance, that all that code was literally taking that media API, and we were taking it directly and enhancing it in a proper status. So I'd love to know more about your use case as what you want to see in the real world use case. So if you let us know in the chat, and we can come back to that a little bit later and see what's going to go on.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, and if you want to read more about REST APIs, you can check out this article at restfulapi.net, not affiliated with Dolby, but it's just a good resource to help you know about what is going on with the Dolby API. So what can we use the Dolby I/O media APIs for? So first things first, let's set our variables again because we are in a new notebook. So I'm going to go back over to our dashboard and I'm going to copy our media API key. If you have closed that tab, you can pull it from the first notebook. It still exists over here. But once again, we're going to replace the API key. We're going to replace the name. And we're going to run the code with Control-Enter. And you'll know it's done with API key and name set. Give me a thumbs up when all of you have properly set your credentials once more. Great. So first things first, let's say all of our files aren't already publicly available. We provided a URL for you that was hosted in an Amazon S3 bucket, but not all of you have that. There's a few different ways to do it. So you can pre-sign URLs. So if you click on that link, it's going to bring you over to our our documentation page, where if you, for example, are using S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure Blob Storage, we provide documentation for you to temporarily pre-sign those URLs. So you don't have to make them public, but you can make them accessible for a short amount of time that we can read them. But sometimes you just have a local file that you want to upload. So this one, we have a local file over here that was made by my colleague Braden, who's actually hosting the communications workshop after this. So we can give that a quick little listen by pressing Control Enter. It's a white noise demo, so it's just an example of some audio that has a lot of noise and white noise that would be able to sound poor, and we can kind of get an idea of how we might want to fix that. We're getting some clarification from Michael in the chat right now. Since we're using Python, maybe run Python from the command line interface and do a simple transcode from there. There are many ways to do HTTP requests, but I wouldn't be using this workbook, right? Any preferred method that would be API calls via HTTP. So the way I would recommend doing it is I wouldn't be writing these in the command line interface. I'd be writing these as a Python file and just running them directly as Python itself, which would be essentially the same idea as this, though. If we do have time at the end, I could show you how we might do that itself. Thank you for the question there. So let's continue on with the interface. So we can take this file and upload it with another API call. So this is going to be the same type of idea going on here, but instead of the enhance or the output, now we're going to be targeting the input URL parameter. We're pre-defining the file path too as just the white noise demo.wav. We have that locally over here. And we also are able to just do the same things in terms of body. The one additional thing is we do need to do a put request at the very end. So what this is doing is it's creating a pre-signed URL using Dolby storage, and we're going to be taking the file and then plopping it onto that pre-signed URL. So we can do Command Enter right now, and it's going to start loading for us. And you're going to see that it's going to say uploading white noise demo.wav. This file is going to be using our temporary Dolby storage, which you can tell is Dolby storage because it's going to start with DLB : //. And this is going to be an isolated location that you can access only with your API key. This is not publicly accessible to anyone in the world with this URL. And it is encrypted at rest. It is controlled and audited. There is a lot of security, but this is temporary storage. You should not be using this to store any files long-term because they will be removed in about 24 hours after you've uploaded it. So don't be thinking that you can get tricky in saving your files to our storage using our data. This is temporary only and is meant just to be a nice little bridge for you to take your files and then be able to process them using our media APIs. So for output, I also do want to note that you don't have to download the files directly. You can also send them to your cloud storage providers, as I mentioned with input as well, where you wouldn't have to download it. It would just automatically write it back to those providers, which you can take a look at the same documentation that we looked at earlier, and we'll tell you how to do all of that as well. So cool. We have the file uploaded. It's all ready. It's all ready to kind of go on. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into Enhance, and we're going to see how we can get a little bit more advanced with an Enhance call to take a look at some parameters to optimize for issues. We have a few different parameters that we can specify and get more specific about with things like noise reduction, speech leveling, loudness correction, and then also be able to kind of determine some presets that help you get a little bit more specific without needing to go in all these different things. So we have content type, which is how you choose the different presets for things like conferences, lectures, mobile phones, which automatically kind of defines a couple of different things for you. We have some documentation once again on content types, where you can go over to the audio quality section, and it's going to tell you all about how we determine all of this. But then you can also define all these parameters directly yourself with things like loudness, dynamics, noise, speech isolation, and also removing things like mouth clicks, popping from the P's and the B's, as well as the harsh sh or s sounds that might go on that you might not want, depending on how professional quality of media you necessarily want to have. Once again, we have documentation on what all these really mean in depth, that you can take a look at your own time. This is not this is not an audio engineering workshop. This is letting you know about Dolby APIs. We're not going to go directly into all that information, but please do know that if you have these questions, we are happy to talk to you about them and help you figure out what's going to be the best use case for your specific audio. So let's see an example of this. Let's go back to the Enhance API and let's kind of expand this a little bit further. We have the same output URL, and headers as we did before, but what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be editing the body parameter over here so that we can get a little bit more specific. We have the content type, where we're saying this is a voiceover, as Braden is trying to do a voiceover kind of information type thing going on over here. And we're going to set the noise reduction to max. We're going to crank that up so we can get rid of all that white noise we can. We want to try to make this sound as clear as possible. We also can enable the hum filter to try to reduce any hum that might be appearing in the background and try to isolate any speech that might be going on. We want to reduce the sibilance sounds because we feel like he's using a lot of those. But let's say he's not using a lot of mouth clicks. So we don't want to do the mouth click reduction. That isn't something that we find helpful. And this is something that you can run multiple calls for as well. Tune and see what works best for you in that specific audio sample that you're using. And then once again, we're going to be sending the post request and printing the response. So once again, let's do a command enter going on over here. We're going to get the job ID as we did once again. And then we can check the job status. So we can do another control enter. We see that it's still running. So this is what it looks like when it's still in progress. You can see that it's a 90% done. It is still running. So we might want to give it another try, where now we do it again and we see that it is a success. So we can download the output. And again, this is the same download that we saw last time. We're saving it as white noise demo enhance.wav. And we are using the Python utilities to be able to download it locally. So we can do another control enter. We're going to be able to get the downloading speech. And once it is complete, we will see white noise demo enhanced.wav appear on the sidebar. And there it is. So if you want to give it a listen, you can do the same control enter on both the new on top and the original on bottom, and hear the difference. I'd love for you to take the time to listen to the two differences. Let us know in the chat what you think and give us a thumbs up when you're done and ready. And in the meantime, I will drink some water. Okay, not seeing any thumbs up. If you're running into any issues, please let us know, and we'd love to help you troubleshoot. If you have any questions or concerns as well, maybe not running into issues, I would also love to know so we can help you out there as well. Starting to get some thumbs up. Thank you so much. This is how we know that we're not going too fast. We're not going over anything. So it's very helpful for me to make sure that we stay very engaged with this. So I'm not going over any of your heads. Especially because there are just a small handful of you here today. We do want to make sure that we're getting all of your questions answered, and that if there's anything that you're hoping to see that we might not cover, we have the chance to be able to answer that for you. This is some time for you to be able to feel empowered and get to use these APIs as you want. So if you have any questions, we do, once again, have documentation, which is going to give you all of this information in a written format on your own time. So make sure you definitely check out our documentation. But for now, we're going to continue over to our diagnose. Our diagnose API is currently in beta, though we're still going to be able to use it right now, which is a really cool tool. It provides kind of the media info in kind of an analyzed quantitative set of information. We're just going to give you an audio quality score. It's going to give you scores also based on a lot of the other previous issues that we highlighted that Enhance tries to fix, such as clipping, such as white noise, such as loudness, such as plosives, and also be able to try to classify what type of content it is, such as something like a podcast or something like a music recording. Diagnose is really fast and also doesn't require a file to be downloaded because the results are actually displayed in the same API call as the status. You can, once again, read more about audio quality and kind of how we're defining these numbers, because what use are numbers when you don't have an idea of what constitutes good versus bad. So you can take a look and see kind of how we're defining what good versus bad means in all of these. We do have some very talented audio engineers on the team who spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we can get these in as much of a user-friendly but also professional quality way as possible. But without any further ado, let's start writing some code. This is going to look the same as Enhance going on over here, but we're going to be calling the diagnose endpoint instead. And we are going to be taking in the same input URL that we had at the very beginning. So we can do a control enter. This is still the white noise demo, but one before it was enhanced. We have a job ID being put on over here. And as you can see, we don't have a download response. We just have a checking status and getting results, because we can get the information from the same API because we don't need to download any file at the end. It doesn't require any storage. So we can do another command enter. And what we're going to see is I have used IPython once again to be able to display the JSON output in a little bit more of an interactive manner. That's because the actual result is typically very long, and you also want to be able to navigate it a little bit more elegantly. But just know that this is just parsed JSON at the very end of the day. We can expand these by clicking on them, so we can take a look at the media info, where the container is going to tell us that this is a WAV file. It is 9.941 seconds long. It gives us the bit rate, the size, the codec that it's part of, the channels and the sample rate and all of that. And if we open up the audio section over here, this is where it's going to give us the scores that I mentioned before. You can see the audio quality, where you can see the average is about a 3.5 out of 10. Not great. That's why we didn't enhance over it. And it gives us the distributions if you're a math and data science nerd. Gives you the worst segment, so it tells you how bad the worst part is, and then it goes in depth on further things. So silence, it can tell you how much silence is there on. Like, are there any awkward gaps in a podcast that you might want to remove? In speech, like how much of it is speech versus how much of it is, say, music. And it's able to get all this information for you and kind of put it together in some type of term. One way you might want to use this in a real world use case, kind of circling back to that, is using diagnose and enhance in tandem to automate kind of your audio quality workflow in more of a professional manner, where you have your raw media that is from your recording directly, and you can send that over to our diagnose API, and you can determine, well, is the quality good enough based on diagnose API? If it is, well, then you're ready for distribution. But if it's not, you should probably tell the person who made the audio first of all, so they know that there's going to be some edits going on with the audio they have. But then we can decide if we want to send it through the Enhance API to see if we can fix it automatically, or if it needs to be sent over to an audio engineer to be fixed manually or rejected outright. This is a very basic kind of flowchart of how this might look, and you might actually want to be repeating a couple of these loops a couple of times, or you might want to go diagnose into Enhance, back into another diagnose of the enhanced audio to kind of see from a statistical level, was Enhance really able to help as much as we wanted it to or not? But it's really going to depend on your own workflow and how it's going to go. Once again, I'm going to leave some time for any questions. Please give me a thumbs up once you are done and have that content. And you can also definitely check out the documentation on how to see, diagnose, and get a little bit more information on how this all works over here. Great, we are blazing through this. So I do want to take this time to give a quick note, as I mentioned before, that this is all in Python just for example purposes. We are language agnostic, where you are able to use whatever languages that you want to use to be able to do these. So we have a lot of different examples. If you go to our API reference, as you can see over here, we have code examples for a bunch of different languages. We have shell script or curl. We have JavaScript, Ruby, PHP, Python, as well as a bunch of other languages that you might find helpful depending on what platforms that you're using, including C++, C Sharp, we have Swift, we have Kotlin, a lot of different options for you to use depending on what workflows that you existingly have, because this is all about just sending information via an HTTP request over to our servers so that we can get the information in the new files back to you. This can be very easy to do as well in our new Postman collection, which I will actually open up and I will also link for you if any of you are big Postman users. This is just a very good tool for you to be able to do this in kind of more, again, of a cloud-based but kind of automated structure, so you can see how a code base is put on. So for example, if we go back to enhance, you can see we have the enhanced structure brought up over here, where you can put in all your different environment variables for things like API keys and that inside of here. If you haven't spent time with Postman, I highly suggest checking it out. This is not going to be a workshop that goes over Postman necessarily, but I highly recommend you take a look at it and see what goes on. We have this highlighted as well on our website. Finally, as I alluded to very early on, it's important to make sure you do keep your API keys and other credentials private. We have documentation for best practices regarding these. But as I mentioned, this API key, in theory, any of you could use it right now. I will be deleting it after this workshop, so none of you can do that. But you probably want to make sure that you have a regular series of rotation going on, just in case anything gets leaked, or for example, you have people who leave the company who no longer should have access to those credentials. We also have the ability for you to create an OAuth 2 token, which is going to be something that will expire automatically over time, which is also an arguably even more secure way of you being able to do that without having to directly expose your API key every single time. So definitely check that out. If anyone has any questions regarding API keys, let us know. I will take that as a no. So let's move on to transcoding, which is once again in beta. This is actually a very new beta that we have going on over here, so we're very excited about it. And the whole idea of transcoding is we want to be able to convert media of a particular file type to another, or we can do things like take a video file and change the resolution of it, or change what type of format it is, or we can change the sample rates or the bit rates of the audio. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, and we support all of the following media types in this image that we have over here, where we are able to both convert and also stream information. So it's a very powerful tool that we're actually working on all the time to try to enhance and increase the capabilities of it for all different types of use cases. Let's check out an example we have over here where we're going to be converting an MP4 video into a WAV audio file. So this is once again going to be another video file. This is going to be kind of similar to the airplane one that we saw earlier. That was a video, but we only just took in the audio because it was enhanced. Enhanced does not right now enhance any video content. But what this is going to do is it's going to take in a number of inputs. Notice that is plural, where you can actually stitch together multiple different videos or audio files together using this API as well. And we're going to be saying, hey, we want to send it over to our Dolby storage as a WAV file and convert it actually and the kind as a WAV file. So we can do another control enter going on over here. We're once again going to get our job ID. We are going to check the job status the same we did with all of the other ones. This one I did so quickly that it hasn't made any progress on it whatsoever. We're going to do another one. Bam, it's done. And we can download the output once more and just do another control enter. We're going to get the downloading, and once it is complete, we will get the airplane example.wav in the sidebar. In theory, I gave you the option to listen to it, but because transcoding is not an enhancing API, it's just a kind of conversion type of API, it's not going to sound any different. This isn't going to enhance it, make it sound better, but it's going to let you know that it has properly downloaded the file and it is properly done inside of a WAV file. It's not just changing the file name. If you have any questions regarding the transcode API, definitely check out the documentation there. Once again, it is constantly changing in a very rapid way. Let me know if you have any questions in chat. Otherwise, give me a thumbs up so we can continue. Cool. So we do have more APIs that we're not necessarily going to get to in this, such as our analyze and analyze speech APIs, which are kind of, in way to think of it, it's a little more complicated than this, but like a bigger version of diagnose, where it can break out a lot of different sections of the audio that you have for their own individual quality scores. The analyze speech API is, as said in the name, very speaker oriented, where it can actually determine who is speaking and how long somebody is speaking for. Excuse me, got a little bit of hiccups. How long somebody is speaking for, so we can make sure that all that is going on properly in those areas, and be able to kind of detect these defects and insights at a much quicker level. We'll explore these in another workshop, so stay tuned and let us know if you're interested, but you can right now see the documentation at the link within here. We also have music mastering, which is currently available at request if you want it right now, but soon to be general admission. And the whole idea of music mastering is that it's like Enhance, but more music specific, so instead of the speech, where it's going to let you pick between a bunch of different types of music styles and then create a professional sounding audio master that will still keep the creative intent of that music intact. So it's a very powerful, very, very interesting tool for any of you musicians and artists out there that I heavily check out that you reach out. So this link over here is going to be able to let you know how to reach out to the team and get all that information over there. Finally, we do have the webhooks and callbacks. So one common issue a lot of people tend to have is they don't want to have to manually pull for the job to be done. So when we were checking the status every single time, especially when you're kind of doing this at scale, you don't want to do that all the time. You want to find a way to be able to automate that process and be able to download the file or do whatever you want next after the job has been done automatically without needing to kind of check and see if it's done every single time. And for that, we do have the webhooks and we have the callbacks, which are going to allow you to submit a custom URL. You're going to need to be able to have a service that's actually listening for this. This can be something like a web service, such as an Express server or a Django server or a Rails server if you're using JavaScript, Python, or Ruby, respectively, or by using some type of integration like Zapier or Slack apps that will be listening for any post requests to come in, which then will let you do the next step. So this picture I have over here is an example I did with Zapier. I actually have a blog post about it, which you can check out at our blog as well, where we have the custom URL that Zapier gives us that we can then input directly into our code so that we can go with a Zapier kind of workflow automation going on there to do the next steps that we want to do, which in this case was actually to send me a Slack message telling me that we were ready to be done. So to read more, I will actually spend some time on this because I think this is a little bit of a cool thing. The way that it's going to happen is inside of the actual payload that you have. We are going to be able to, this is going to create a webhook, but it's going to be able to kind of give you the schema of what's going on inside what's happening here that you can then parse as you want and be able to send to whatever data needs to happen there. I will also show you the blog that we have over here, which you can just reach by clicking blog, but it's also dolby.io/blog, or you can see a bunch of different developer information that's going to help you out with all of that over here. and we'll link it as well in the chat. Michelle already did that, where you can check all that information out as well. To recap today, we did go over the Enhance API, where we were able to enhance normally, but also specifically go over some noise reduction and some speaker isolation that we've had going on in terms of everything. And we have gone through the Diagnosed API, where we've gone through quality scores and learning more about your media, as well as the Transcoding API, where we've been able to tell you about media streams, and we did convert to different codecs. We did touch as well on the Analyze and Music Mastering APIs and told you what was going on over there. And we discussed authentication best practices for you to be able to have the most secure different thing you can. If you want to go back and try it again later, I have linked the GitHub repository directly within here, where you can do it on your own time. You can see the code. Once again, this is all Python that is completely reproducible. Just has some markdown in between all the different Python that you want. And if you have any questions, as Dan linked, please reach out to us at the support website at support.dolby.io, or you can also follow me on Twitter directly if you want to talk to me, Griffin, at Wing of the Griffin. And please enter a survey to let us know how we did. We want your feedback. We want you to know how you did. So I will link this in the chat as well, so you can access it directly. But we really, really would like to know how we did, how we can improve, because we are changing these workshops and doing them every month, trying to make the best type of thing we can. I'd like to take this time for any questions of content we might not have gotten into, any final comments and notes that you might want to get into. We have about 15 minutes left, so please, anything, any questions, any Dolby-related things, asking me about myself, I would love to know about it. But thank you for attending this workshop.
Hey, Griffin, I wonder if it'd be possible to do a little quick scripting example, maybe show like a script to do something really basic. We've got a little time.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of time. I think that sounds like probably a pretty good idea, where I can stop sharing this screen. So let me pull up VS Code.
Yeah. I know for a lot of people, like going from a workshop to actual coding is definitely a different point of view. So it'd be cool to see something simple. I'll let you get that set up.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions while he's setting up?
Actually, let me do it this way. Cool. So the way that I would kind of typically get into scripting and getting started with all this is I would start actually at our documentation page, where we would start at docs.dolby.io. This is the media one, which you can access. If we go directly to docs.dolby.io, it's going to show you, once again, we have communications and we have the media APIs. We can click on the media APIs to get to the media section. And then I would go to the API guide section on the left over here, or the tutorial section also works. They're both pretty similar, and decide which one you want to use. So let's go to Enhance, for example, over here. And it's going to kind of give you kind of a bunch of step-by-step ways to kind of get started and give you some scaffolding code that you can get used to. So for example, I can copy this code directly over here if I wanted to do a new media API input, but let's focus only on Enhance over here. So we can go over to making an Enhance request over here, and we can copy this scaffolding over here, and we can go over to VS Code, create a new file, and paste that directly in. The way that I would probably do it is I would save it as its own file and just kind of have a collection of different files and run them together. So let's change the syntax over here to Python. just so we can know that we are working in Python over here. But what we're going to be doing is have the scaffolding code we need to put in our API key. So let's take our API key over here.
Yeah, and if you wouldn't mind magnifying that a little bit so we can see it a little clearer. Awesome.
And in the scaffolding code, it actually gives you once again, URL of the airplane that we worked in before. But you can replace this with whatever you want, even a variable if you wanted to kind of automate that process as well. And you can change the output code to whatever you want it to be as well. And once again, we have the content body. It's just automatically deciding it to be a mobile phone for you because that's what this airplane one was recorded on. It was recorded on an iPhone. And then we can save this file. Let's just save it to the desktop. Why not? Create a new folder, and save it as enhance.py. Save it. Okay. And then we can open a new terminal. Go to the desktop, go to the workshop folder, and we can run Python 3. Let's enhance.py. And it's going to output the job ID, the same as we did with the other job ID going on over here. And then we can continue on with the rest of the steps, where if we go back over to the quick start, we can go over to the check the job status, copy that code over here. We can create a new file, paste that in, switch it to Python. This is using os.environ, which is letting you use environment variables directly within Python. So you can actually do an export Dolby IO API key equals. Need to pull the API key once more. Paste that in. Save it. So now we don't actually need to input, we don't need to input our API key directly anymore as long as we're on the same terminal section because we've inputted that as an API variable. But we can save it as status.py. Is this the most optimal way of doing it? Depends on your workflow. This is just the way that I like kind of showing it off to make it kind of as understandable as possible in terms of what it is. One way you might want to do this is you might want to put these directly within functions. So you can call which proper function you want it to be. So you could, like, for example, link all this inside of, like, call it as enhance, call it as check status, call it as download status. But for now, we can save this. We can call Python 3 status.py. It looks like I exported the variable incorrectly. Yeah, I put in thing underscore. Tends to happen. Let's try that again. Oh no! Job ID. I didn't put that in. For that, you can go and copy the job ID, which once again, you can also save as an environment variable after we have pulled it because it's all in the JSON response. That's what we did within the Jupyter Notebook itself. But we can replace the job ID variable going on over here. Save once again in the Python, and we see that it's done. Let's go. And then finally, we can go and download the media, which we can copy directly. Again, copy paste. This time it recognizes it Python output.py. So this is output media path. Let's just save it as enhanced.mp4. API key has been set. We have the same output URL, which we need to make sure is the same output URL. And then we have the same downloading script. So we should be able to go Python 3 output.py. It's downloading, and now we can ls, and we can see we have enhanced MP4 going on over there. We got a question. Can I use the transcode API to demux an MP4 and get back the audio video elementary schools from Dolby?
Yeah, I just placed the link for how to do that in the chat for everybody to see.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Absolutely. That is something that you can do. That's kind of one of the most powerful things that you can do with our transcode API, where you are able to use our cloud-based services to kind of modify the video and audio of the file and become whatever you want. Thank you for that question. But yeah, I hope that kind of outlined how using this in a real Python file might actually look like. Because we have 5 minutes left still, please type in questions. Like kind of like what I'm saying here is we can kind of say like function enhance, then that's not how you Python function. Why am I live coding? Live coding is always an issue. But no, you can define a Python function over here for the enhance, and then define the same Python function in the same file of the check status, and then call the proper kind of function that you want all within the same file, and also call them with each other if you want to import from the different files that you've created as well, if you want to kind of work around these different things. This is all to help you get started in understanding how these REST API requests are being made so that you can take your own kind of use cases, needs, inspiration, and create whatever automations and workflows that you want to have for what you're working on, whether it's a passion project or whether it is your job's kind of needs to kind of get some good audio quality, like you're a podcaster or something like that. We want to give you these tools so that audio doesn't have to be as much of a question as it is something that you can just go directly to Dolby for. Thank you all so much for attending. Yes, please, once again, fill out the survey. It helps us so much if you fill it out. I believe you get entered into a raffle for a t-shirt if you do submit it. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely make sure you take a look at that too. It isn't just a survey for taking a survey's sake. I'll leave a couple minutes left for questions, but in terms of what's going to be happening next, we're going to have a 15-minute break before you can hop over to Braden's workshop on using the communications APIs. And the communications APIs are really cool as well, where they focus on real-time communications instead of post-processing like we have in the media, where if you want to do something like making your own Zoom application and taking use of spatial audio for your own kind of audio and web conferencing needs. It's a super awesome tool, so highly, highly recommend you check that one out if you have the time.
Yeah, thank you everyone for interacting and your great questions. Again, that survey is real important to give us feedback on making these workshops even better each time we do that. It's really great to see everyone here. Griffin, great job.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jason, in the background as well for helping out. It was really nice to be able to teach all of you this. Once again, please don't hesitate to reach out after this as well via our support links or via social media. We would love to chat and talk to you, even if it isn't a question, even if you just want to say hi to us. We're always around. We'd love to hear about what you're building, what ideas you have, and see how we might be able to be helpful in it. So thank you for showing up. We will once again take a 15-minute break, go grab some coffee, go grab some food, go use whatever facilities you need to use, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you so much. All right, bye everyone.